Good morning and good day for everyone for joining us on this session today. On behalf of Signity Technologies, the global leaders in digital assurance services, and our recent foray into digital engineering, we are at the forefront of enabling true digital transformation through software quality engineering and automation to the customers. My name is Ram Vedam. I am the host for our Digital Dialogues Fireside Chat series. We aspire to bring in pragmatic digital insights from practitioners and analysts. And on behalf of Signity, I welcome you all to the show. While we get deeper into it, a couple of anecdotes from what I read from the Forrester's research. 25% of services decision makers at banks say their company's technology strategy is amongst the biggest challenges to execute digital transformation. And 35% of global service decision makers at large banks say that their organization is actually expanding their digital transformation, while 12% of them are yet to catch up. These statistics further signify the fact that customers today have one single agenda to win the digital landscape and for which they got to be digital first. And at Signity, our endeavor is to help our clients achieve that. During the last decade and a half, some of our experiences of working with our customers have made us believe that software is at the center of all of this transformation. Without much delay, let me sort of bring in a couple of our guests today, acknowledged global thought leaders who are going to talk and share a lot about how digital transformation in banking, in particular leveraging digital assurance, is getting accelerated. I take this opportunity to welcome Diego. Diego is the Vice President and Principal Analyst from Forrester. Since 2005, Diego has been primarily working and contributing and advising global customers of Forrester on application development, delivery, SDLC processes, agile and lean transformation, and DevOps. Diego is a globally acknowledged thought leader, and we take immense pride in elucidating the fact that we've had significant amount of understanding of the market landscape through insights that Diego shares. Thank you, Diego, for being on the call today. Along with Diego, we have Paul. Paul Trotter is the Deputy Chief Technology Officer at Atom Bank. Atom Bank is the UK's first mobile-only, digital-first, app-only bank, challenging the globally known fintech models and have been trailblazing the digital-first approach to banking. At Atom, Paul has been is on the leadership roles accountable for IT service delivery across several technology teams, including architecture, engineering, test, and service transition. A seasoned banking technology professional and leader with vast experience in leading banks, financial services, and consulting organizations in UK and Ireland. Prior to Atom, he spent significant amount of time at global companies like FIS, Accenture, and Capco. With more than 20 years delivering digital transformation change in financial services industry, he's led complex programs in some of the biggest names in the sector, driving in digital change. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you have for taking time, and I'm sure this is going to be a pretty useful session for all our audience. Thank you very much. Paul, good morning, and how have you been doing today?
Yeah, I think excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful. Diego, how was the day?
It's very nice and warm here in Italy. Thanks for inviting me and having me here. Looking forward to the session.
Lovely. We have Paul from UK and Diego from Italy, and I'm joining in from Hyderabad and our audience all over the world. This is truly a global session. So, let me start with Paul. Paul, as a practitioner, as a technology leader, driving in change, how do you see the banking landscape evolve, and what has been your experience with digital transformation at Atom?
Thank you again for the invite for today's session. In terms of the banking landscape, it evolves in many ways due to the differing needs of all the customers. It will move away from a one-size-fits-all and organisations attempting to be a one-stop shop for all financial products to be a more bespoke service where banking recognises the actual journey that the customer is on and hence their part in this. For instance, you're buying a house to build a future together, not getting a mortgage. As part of this, the bank needs to offer value, slick and automated, and after all, who wants to actually talk to the bank? And if they do actually need to speak to them, they need to be empathetic, efficient, and human. Atom's digital transformation has been massive. The bank has been live since 2016 and has already been built twice, once utilising third-party products, traditional data centres, and the second, leveraging the cloud and including migrating onto cloud-native technologies. This build and the migration, while still operating the bank, was a massive challenge and one of our biggest achievements, especially when you consider the huge increase in throughput leading to outcomes where our Trustpilot and store ratings are around 4.7 and our NPS is now in the 80s.
Wonderful. That was a very good insight. Diego, thank you once again. Your insights have enlightened a lot of us as practitioners and global companies. Would you give us some, points that you want to open up? You've covered the entire digital transformation very closely, working with application dev leaders and global companies. What, according to you, are these technology changes that are driving transformation at banks as their digital agendas?
Yeah, so I'm, basically more than 36% of the inquiries and a huge percentage of our customers in Forrester are from financial services. So a lot of the research that we write about comes, clearly from that industry, banks, insurance, and so forth. One thing we saw during the pandemic was, of course, operational efficiency. Everybody since the pandemic has been focusing not on that, besides the new, and cooler stuff that financial firms are doing. But operational efficiency seems to be in the research still a main topic when we look at the data. What are those things? Like cloud still dominates, transformational investments, both hybrid and native, of course, more and more in banks, which is, kind of surprising if you compare it to 5-10 years ago. Business intelligence to drive business based on data and insights. It's always been, an important aspect of banks, but more and more so with AI and machine learning, of course. Digital experience platforms, I guess that ties more to what Paul was saying, but basically, to differentiate companies, banks have to find new ways to differentiate. And in Forrester, we talk about digital sameness, because at the end of the day, many produce nice apps, mobile apps, and after 6 months they all pretty much look the same. So there's more they need to do. They really need to kind of dig deeper into their operational efficiencies of the back offices, I would say. And last but not least, security and privacy is a very hot topic, of course, on their agenda, high on their agenda. And one thing I think they kind of still underestimate, but maybe that's for a later chat, is there's a few areas that we can take a look at.
Great. I really love that word, the digital sameness. I think at Signity, in essential, we believe that frictionless digital customer experience is the paramount aspect for ensuring digital transformation is successful, and cross variety of digital initiatives that transcend technology roles inside fintechs and banks today is a very interesting proposition. Getting back to Paul, so Paul, what are the key challenges that you faced, and how have you been working around them in driving this transformation, both as a technology practitioner that you are, and in general as a digital leader that you've been?
There's lots of challenges from large transformations of any scale, as there are from any large program. One of the key ones is how do you run it whilst not throttling a bank as well as hence the current customer offering. But it's really important that while you're doing this change, that especially a bank the size of Atom, it hasn't got endless number of employees to go and put on stuff, and you can't just go and bring in third parties all over the place, because again that may give different challenges around how you go on to support it. So it's kind of how do you do a sensible blend of both whilst not creating debt that then needs to be retrofitted into the program. Another one of the big challenges is delivering so that it remains positive experience for the customer and the colleagues whilst you're migrating from our perspective onto a new banking stack and offering new and relevant products. You change the size, it's like changing the engine of a plane whilst it's in midair. You've still got your bank, you're still running it, you've still got to be compliant, you've still got to provide all the service and offerings, and at the same time, you're actually changing that plane from something very traditional into something a lot more slicker and more of a fighter jet. And then from our perspective, one of the other big challenges was when we did the second build of the bank and the move to cloud, we brought a lot of things in-house. So we brought engineering in-house, we brought service in-house. So this led to us, one, we had to go and learn bring on board all those people and learn how the stack itself from our perspective and make sure that was fully understood and handed past through. But also it meant actually we now needed our own delivery methodologies rather than you couldn't just leverage the third-party ones that you were previously able to go and do. So we've made a conscious decision to go agile across the company, not just within technology, which is really, really important. And again, it's around how do you actually agile to an extent is also a culture as much as it is actually a change. So and a pure methodology. So it's how you embed that across the rest of the bank to then be able to go and provide the throughput so that people can see and believe in the changes as they now become small and often when historically for us it was more of a waterfall and therefore it was a lot more big bang.
Got it. So agile as a philosophy, agile as a change driver, agile as a culture. Wonderful. I think those were the key takeaways from whatever I heard you speak right now, Paul. Thank you very much for that. Diego, so as such, while you wear an analyst hat and also someone who helps organizations, look at data from your research, what are those challenges which are confronted most often? I would repeat most often, right? Because there are certain common key challenges that you would be talking about in all such digital transformation journeys.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. It sounded like Paul and I had exchanged. People might think we exchanged ideas, but we didn't. And I'm going to actually re-emphasize what he said. So I've been studying agile and DevOps transformations for many years, besides testing being my other big area, of course. And I just published a research and I do this research every 2 years of the state of agile in the market. And I just published that research at the beginning of this year, 2022, basically. And guess what? It still is I came up with the analogy that transforming to agile at scale in a company and in a bank is like a long trip to Mars. It's very hard. And one of the reasons why it's hard is exactly on those points that Paul was talking about, right? It's about organizational structure. It's also about skills. It's not just about technology, which many think sometimes, or just just learning and going and doing some training. So I would say, based on that research, I split the market between beginners and neophytes, intermediates and experts. Well, Paul is clearly more in between the intermediates and the experts, based on what I heard. if he's really doing, and I assume he's doing what he said, right? Trying to instill that new culture, that behavior. That's something that many organizations, the data shows that many banks are not really doubling down on those type of issues. They kind of put change management on the side. And instead, that's kind of one of the most important things, especially if you want to work differently. And the other one is around organizational structures that become more fluid. There's lots of banks actually on the surface. A lot of banks are discussing about leveraging some of that Spotify engineering model with chapters and squads and tribes and I would say that's kind of a trend, but not everybody is doing it in the right way or are really kind of embracing the model. Swarms are another good way to do this. So I think organizational transformation and adaptation is one of the biggest challenges I see, and behavioral change has always been among the top 3 challenges in this research that I've been doing now for the past 12 years, almost every 2 years. And of course, there's a little bit more around technology. There's some struggles around there because we say everybody talks about automation, but we find that between 90 and 99% of not just banks, this is more general, are still very paper-based, have some paper-based in their process, right? Despite what they say and what we think.
That's true. So I heard the journey to the Mars, I heard swams and squads and whatnot. So you're right, Diego. Some of these conversations are something that we are seeing practically with many of our customers. And getting back to Paul. So Paul, given the accelerated transformation being witnessed globally, how are you actually proceeding to look at the future from here? I'm sure you would have had roadmaps and you're thinking ahead, and most of that would be planned now to execute. Help us through with that journey ahead.
So we need to move away from one size fits all and recognize that one size fits no one. So you don't ever go to a shop and you don't ever buy a t-shirt that fits everybody. Everyone goes and buys them personal. In fact, even if I went and bought a medium t-shirt today, it would still offer me different cuts around regular, around slim fit, and the like. So we need to do exactly the same thing with banking. So the challenge going forward is the personalisation and the relevance of the offering for the actual customer journey and the customer's real circumstances. So there's data available now everywhere, but we need to use it smartly and enhance the customer offerings so that you're ensuring the relevance and the value to both to the customer. And in doing so, effectively, you're providing value to the bank. Automation is key, and it's interesting what Diego just said, because automation really, what does it mean? Does it mean straight through processing? Because actually less handoffs. Are we able to just make that process slicker and slicker? Because going back to almost how I introduced the whole thing, people don't want to talk to a bank and they don't want to wait. They're buying a house, so they want to know instantly, can they afford that house as they're walking through that door, or just after they've viewed it? They don't want to be waiting 18 days to go and get an offer through. So it's looking at the end-to-end processes and going, well, what can I automate and what can I leverage from where, using various APIs and everything else, to actually make that a slick process. For regardless of the journey, I go into a car dealership. I want to not just fall in love with the car. I want to know I can have that car actually, and I could order it today, because none of us are really that patient. So it's all about how do you utilize the data that's there to understand, actually be able to go, what's the true risk involved in this? To actually then be able to go, well, then here's a fair price for going and doing it, and here's an instant price, but not an instant price like some companies, when they give you like a second-hand car price, they lowball it, and then when they see your car, they then basically they can increase it slightly. We want to be able to start with a fair price because the data is already there. So I think actually it's not necessarily about which products do you go for and how do you grow. It's all about actually how do you make each one of them relevant, and how do you make each one of them almost seamless. So effectively, you just don't need to, in a nice way, you don't need to talk to the bank, where you feel like they've still spoken and listened to you, and you've got the appropriate value at the end. Not you've got standard off the shelf. This is the deal for this loan.
Got it. That was quite detailed, actually. That was a lot of reflections I could see from your experience driving the change there. Diego, getting back to you, importance of digital assurance, software quality, more important automation continues to grow. So, what is the original reason for the increased adoption of digital assurance, particularly for digital transformation being successful? How have you been seeing that from your view lens?
So before I answer that question, I want to pick up on another thing that I find interesting that Paul was talking about, straight through processing and more automation. The interesting thing for banks is I'm going to borrow the definition of what digital is from my colleague and friend, John Bratinsvik. He writes about low code a lot. And, John came up with this interesting sentence that I really like and I buy into, which is, digital means that software is an expression of the business. Right now, it's an expression, not the expression, because if you think about Amazon, of course, right? I mean, we get stuff home in 24 hours. It's not the software that's creating those physical products and delivering them to our house. Of course, there's a lot of other stuff going on: logistics, data warehousing, automation, and people, hard workers driving the cars and bringing the stuff to our homes. So that's why it's an expression and not the expression. But if you think about banks, right, as Paul said a couple of times, I don't want to talk to my bank. I don't talk to my bank. I use an app. I don't know when the last time I walked into a bank was, even for important transactions. So I think, banking has a huge opportunity of really interpreting that sentence of digital is software is an expression of the business, and it could be a pretty broad one for banking. That's what I wanted to bring the point about, because that kind of ties me into the next question you asked about digital assurance, which is, so of course with this trend of agile and DevOps that we see growing, over 69% of our respondents to the to the modern technology operations survey that we studied, which is a broad survey, reaches out to over 2,000 people. Over 69 are adopting and have adopted Agile and DevOps, and another 20% are planning to do so. So kind of it is a solid trend. Now, why are they doing that? Because they want to deliver software faster. They want to deliver software in a short period of time, continuous delivery. And that's what's driving digital assurance, because how can you deliver continuously and fast with high quality? Because again, software is an expression of the business, so it has to be high quality. Otherwise, what expression is it going to be? It's going to be a poor expression and experience, of course, of the business. And so to really be able to do continuous delivery, we talk about continuous testing. You have to be able to automate. You have to be in that loop. You can't break the continuous delivery life cycle saying, oh, we're going to do performance testing at the end. No, it all has to shift left. And so the digital assurance today is basically motivated, is a direct consequence of all this. It's a direct consequence of banks now wanting to deliver software, even if they're using packaged apps. Those packaged apps are changing, every month and not every year. And so faster, high quality delivery of features and function and of features and products drives more continuous testing, continuous automation, and all these great trends that we're seeing in what we call digital engineering, but still requires the personas to be not just developers. I don't actually like talking about digital engineering much, because I think it's kind of making people think, oh, as a business testers, we don't need them anymore. Everything can be done by developers. That's not true. You still need business testers. You still need subject matter testers. And of course, developers can do much more testing.
Correct. Absolutely agree. I think we at Signity believe the fact that a reliable, robust, scalable, secure, and intuitive to use software is a must to be a digital winning paradigm, and for which software quality and digital assurance with unrivaled automation becomes extremely important. And that emphasizes the fact that there is a significant amount of role for assurance, of course, backed by a whole bunch of intelligent automation and engineering processes, make it much more faster and better. And it can't it was very aptly summarized by you, Diego. Getting back to Paul, what would be your take on someone getting started with digital transformation today? As a technology leader that you are, what would you advise them, and why so? And how do you think it can be envisioned, in terms of the different phases that someone might probably want to look at?
Okay, there's quite a lot in that question, but to keep it really simple and high level, for me, there's three things. Know why you're doing it and whom it's for. So is it an internal transformation, or is it actually for our customers? And know why. Is it really transformation, or is it just change, the change portfolio? Because they are, again, different things. Secondly, you've got to commit to it and be excited by it at all levels. Because if it's truly transformation, it affects everybody. There's nobody in the company that it won't be touched by it. So again, even though you've got the word digital in there, and it doesn't mean it's technology, it means it's everybody. And then thirdly, you've got to make the changes small and often. If you talk about transformation, people always think 2 to 5 years. And if you're going to do a program that's 2 to 5 years, and you're going to, in your head, you're planning on leapfrogging everybody else, that won't really actually happen. Because remember, everybody else is still going to be running for those 2 to 5 years. But by the time you've actually done your leapfrog, they'll have moved significantly anyway. And also, so will the world, and so will the customers, and so will everyone's needs. So worst still, you could be standing still, and worse still, actually, you could have transformed into something that the customer now doesn't want. So it's how you actually keep the transformation, which is why I asked at the beginning, is it transformation or change? How do you keep it relevant? And how do you keep the buy-in and the excitement going throughout? And you do that through the small and often, because that's how you get momentum, so people don't lose belief in it. Because going back a couple of questions ago, you also, by doing something of this scale, you are limiting some other things that you would be able to go and do as an organization, hence why everyone needs to be brought in throughout. And so that's what I'd be going and doing. And I'd also be looking at it from can I do POCs? Can I actually make those POCs live? Can I get true feedback from customers around, so you can ensure that you are remaining relevant? And if that means you're to get there, you're having to go slightly in that direction to get there, it's not a straight line, then that's actually probably a better answer. Or if that endpoint changes slightly because the world's changed, again, you're able to respond as you're going and actually make certain that you're going in the right direction still. So you've got to keep your head up in that sense.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Let me go back to Diego. So, for banks which are attempting digital transformation, Diego, in particular, how do you think they should structure their quality engineering function, embracing agile and also ensuring CI/CD in play and things like that, and also the customer experience dimension? So, what is an ideal structure that you envisage from your research standpoint?
Well, I don't think there is an ideal structure for everyone, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's I have to give credit to what Paul just said, right? I mean, everyone has a different context, and even though all those frameworks we have, I don't think nobody should apply those SAFe or Spotify or DAD as they are. They need to be customized and adapted to your organization. But of course, there are a few winning ones that we can be inspired by. And I already mentioned one, which I like a lot, is this kind of matrixed organization, different from the traditional one that we all are familiar with. And so I think that organizing teams, it has to be a fluid organization, right? It has to be an organization with a lot of dynamism, and we've got these and flexibility. And I think that is a big challenge, because we come from a world where we've been very siloed, and A doesn't talk to B, and with all these big impediments. And so what we're trying to do is, first of all, try to flatten the organization a bit. I remember, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, I can't remember exactly how many, but it was a long time ago. I was in the UK, I'm not going to say the name, very large, huge bank. I had this presentation on two testers, and I had about 300 or 400 people in the room. 300 or 400 testers. And they were part of the center of excellence of testing. Those times are gone, right? And they're gone forever. The testing center of excellence should be federated. Testers have to be part of the product teams, and they have to be dedicated to the teams. They shouldn't be doing more than one product, working on one product, more than one product at a time. Does that mean you have no centralization? No, you do. You still have some centralization, and there are things in a test center of excellence that is just a smaller center, which basically can look at the good patterns to harvest and share with everyone. Maybe the selection of the tools, perhaps working and selecting the partners to work with, like Signity or others, right? And having that relationship, the metrics that you want to use to have kind of an overall uniform view of quality. But where the action is happening in testing, it's in the product teams. They are the ones that decide how much they need to test, when they can automate things, what needs to be automated, and make sure that the product is basically, going out the door with a level of quality that the product owners of the products are happy with, and all the users that use the product. So it's a very fragmented kind of organization. And there's one thing, and so that's brought its own problems, right? Which is we've gone from these siloed organizations where we knew everything more or less happening in there, and now to this very fragmented organization where we feel we've lost a little bit of control, right? That's what I hear clients complaining about. And so that's where also other things come in to help manage this. It's the metrics that we use, and things like value stream management that help add more visibility, connecting the pipelines along value streams, seeing where value is being generated, where there is, impediment. So there's a few things, and testing is part of that. And testing can't be just like the ivory tower that it used to be. Independent, that's why we don't talk much about independent, but it's more like smart, being, purpose and highly skilled organization that can partner on a peer level with developers and business to push the products out of the door with high quality.
Got it. That was very interesting. The move from a siloed ivory tower to a federated, and the structures that you were speaking about. Paul, what are your reflections on Diego's comments on the structure? Do you have something that you could share?
So I agree with what Diego's just said, and actually, testing is almost whether we call them developers or whether we call them engineers, effectively within that team, they all need to be as one, including the BA, including the architect, including the product owner, including the business, and they need to focus and understand it so that actually the quality comes through, and it needs to become automated so it becomes part of the pipeline, so that actually you can be very confident as it can go through the rest of the stack seamlessly and quickly, because small is really, really key, because it just minimizes your risk because of the scale of the change, and it gives you choices. And if the testers are truly embedded and therefore truly understand what's taking place from day one, and they've been talking with both BAs and engineers, then they're always going to test. The quality is always going to be considerably higher. They aren't looking for needles in haystacks because they actually know what it looks like to start with, and therefore they can test it appropriately. But automation is also very, very key, and it being directly into the pipelines, because speed is key. And with the speed, you can then tailor things. And you can't tailor something that's too slow to get out, because effectively by the time you tailor it, the wheel's moved again.
Understood. We have some questions coming in live from our audience. I'll take a few of them, and let us see how we could go after those questions, and both of you can chime in. First one, Diego, in fact, it's addressed to you. It says, can you give a quick brief on how testing itself has changed within software delivery over the last 12 years of your agile research? And what do you think are those key ingredients of success in terms of metrics that we need to look at to declare the fact that quality engineering programs are successful? That's a question that have come in from a couple of audience here.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and keep it short because I could talk for hours about this. But basically, let me just briefly see the three big steps that testing has made. The first one is, of course, when I started writing research 10 to 12 years ago, I spent, I think, the first 4 or 5 years of that period convincing people that if you're trying to go to agile, testing needs to be one of the most important elements you need to rethink. And so, you can't keep doing what you're doing with your test center. We already talked about that. And just the developers become agile, right? Without involving testing. And as a matter of fact, that's what I was seeing a lot of times. There were companies complaining, we can't really be agile. Agile keeps breaking because, we build and then we do the testing, and the bugs come back, and we're going back to refixing the bugs, and it just, doesn't work, right? So testing had to be brought into the loop and become parallel. And that was kind of and at the same time, of course, it was a shift from manual to more automation. And so step 2 has been all about ruthless automation. That's how I called it, right? So let's try and automate as much as we can in the CI/CD loop, etc. Well, then we found out. So fast forward, people were starting to do to kind of increase the level of automation, decentralizing the teams from centralized. I talked about that. I'll talk about metrics in a minute, but then it was all about ruthless automation, right? We've got pipelines, we're moving to the cloud, testing, we've got the tools, testing is kind of cheap. Let's just automate from an automation perspective. It can be cheap. Let's do it. Let's just automate everything so that we can be fast. Fast was the key word. Well, that's not true, because it's still, it's expensive to automate stuff. The tools kind of struggled before they got to the place where they are today, where they can do a better job. But guess what? The level of automation has plateaued. The level of automation of testing plateaued around, especially from a functional perspective. For those doing agile, most of them were between 30 to 50%. And it's been around that 45, 50% for the last 5 years. So what is missing and what is going to be the next step, in my opinion, is going from ruthless automation, because probably we don't need to automate everything, and we don't need to execute automation of all my test of all my regression. But I want to do that based on the changes that I really make and the new stuff that impacts my regression. And so we're moving from ruthless to smart, right? So now the goal for everyone is smart automation. We've learned a lot about automation. Let's try and do it, but let's be smart about it. And that's where AI and machine learning comes in. And that's kind of the wave we're in right now. And I think we'll continue for the foreseeable future, right? It's all about smart automation. It's not about testing more and everything. It's about being smarter about around the way we test.
Got it. That gives me
just to sort of complement and add to that, because I do agree. Just another couple of concerns, barriers, things that challenges that come along, on that. Actually, let's just test and automate everything. Is your test data? How do you manage your test data when you're doing that? If you go and start to run suite after suite of automation every day, your environment soon becomes huge, and the kind of for what purpose, for what value, what benefit, which then leads you on to the second one, which is environment management. So it's very easy to say I'm in the cloud, but actually you're still running everything as if it was in a data center on VMs, and actually you're not really leveraging the cloud functions and everything else associated with that. So environments and test data management, actually, rather than test data itself, are as equally important as your automation strategy, because without those, effectively, it's very, very easy to do waterfall with iterative build, which is really what Diego was describing earlier, rather than but calling it agile. And actually it just gets queued up as it goes through further on up the stack, effectively, as it goes through into production. And it's very easy to fall into and very difficult to get out of, particularly if historically you've been a waterfall company, because you're actually looking for everything to be live, and therefore you haven't necessarily got the difference between what's a technology feature flag compared to a customer feature flag to enable things to go live at different points in time. And then just also to pick up a little bit on metrics. I think metrics are essential. Metrics both internally that you use to go and actually understand how you're performing and everything else, but actually the most important metrics, and actually the hardest ones to get hold of, are the outcome metrics. So I'm making these various changes. What was the expected outcome of those changes, and did we achieve that? Is that what ops saw? Is that what we saw through propositions or whatever else it might be within the actual wider business itself? Because that gives you a purpose from an engineering perspective, rather than I've just gone and done 200 story points, whereas actually a point is an arbitrary value which we're all going to debate around what point means more than anything else. So it's kind of the metrics bit is really, really key. And to go and get to the outcomes part of metrics, you really need strong product owners and understanding of what's actually taking place within each and every change, therefore.
excellent.
Yeah, I can, if you allow me, Sarim, I should, because I didn't answer the question actually on the metrics that you posed. So really, I'm just going to add one thing, that I wrote a report, Modern Application Development Metrics That Really Matter. And yes, it is about outcome, and it's specifically around business value, measuring business value. And all the team has to be measured on that business value, and that we're producing business value. It doesn't matter how fast we go. And even if things that we're doing are right, if they are not are done right, but they're wrong for the business because they're not delivering value to the business. And that's what we need to focus on. Therefore, quality, efficiency, engagement, progress are leading metrics into the outcome metrics, because at the end of the day, if you are delivering value and you're slow, you're going to be slowly delivering value. If you are delivering value and it's poor quality, you're going to be delivering your value, you're not going to have the value. So there's really kind of a new way to look at metrics, in terms of not just one metric, not thousands of metrics, but just the right metrics in the right dashboard with the right correlations. And quality is one of the buckets, of course. Yeah.
Right. I think both of you touched the intricate aspect of the measurement and outcome metrics. And I was about to anyway touch about test data, which Paul covered. That also brings to me this thing. right? A fair amount of algorithms at play today are AI infused, and a fair amount of outcomes are ML driven. So, Paul, as a technology leader in your tech landscape and the way you look at an app only situation that you deal with, how do you see the intervention of an AI and ML at a technology layer, and what sort of interventions that it can bring in? I mean, if you're looking at a model that you want to probably apply to take live, it could be a recommendation, it could be a buyer profiling, it could be a launch of a particular offering towards a set of customers. So, can you throw some light on how intelligence at the core is something that you are envisioning? Is that all fad, or you're seeing it live in action? Any insights would be useful.
So in terms of how data is used for customers and how it, and therefore for the benefit of the customer, you can already see actual data not just being taking mortgages. I'm going to apply a multiple of 3.5, for a couples or whatever else, of 4 times for an individual person. Actually, I've got the data now to be able to go, well, in reality, this person doesn't spend, or they only have this following things, and therefore, in reality, we can offer the following thing, the following amount for them. Forget multiples. So it actually becomes a far more, far more relevant piece of work, more than anything else, and far more relevant to the customer in terms of relevant value. In terms of actual, what do you do with the actual knowledge around that, and what do we do in terms of, we can use the stats, for example, from the app to understand where people are dropping out and why on journeys. That's really important. So we can then go, okay, well, what do we need to do there to help enhance that journey, so that actually people don't get stuck there, where whatever stuck means it, for those people. So again, there's elements of it which we can do from that, and then as we make a change, we can then go, okay, so previously we saw a dropout rate of whatever X, and now we see a dropout rate of Y, and now what do we need to do about it to actually get Y down again? And so again, it's around how do we, you can see, and we see through lots of different stats, and not just purely around data mining and things like that, but just from actual propensity of people to contact. What are they actually contacting about? Well, okay, well, is that just simply because the text isn't clear enough, or is it actually an individual, a real true problem that we need to go and underline fix? Both are problems with one really quick to go and do, and that you can then see it in almost an instant response. And then another one would take a little bit longer while you understand truly what's actually happening with the customer. But from an outcome perspective, you see the data pretty much instantly, because you can see after it's gone in, well, what does it do from those metrics that are coming through onto the various dashboards.
Understood. Diego, if I'm not wrong, you wrote in a report about AI infused applications and AI led testing, testing bots, using bots for testing, things like that. Would you want to give some insights into those perspectives, and where do you see the disruption coming in, particularly in a complex landscape like a fintech that we are talking about, where there are numerous interactions for an app apart from the conventional functionality that it beholds?
Right. So I actually have been writing two big streams of research around this. One side is how you can leverage an AI and machine learning, infusing it into testing the traditional software world, right? And I don't think that's what you're asking about. There's a whole bunch of use cases, self-healing.
Well, I would love to hear about that as well, considering the
You would like to
gap.
hear? Okay, well, great. Then,
Yes.
there's a whole bunch of use cases that I've seen vendors, system integrators, service companies that have. I think the service companies actually initiated this market. The tool vendors have been slower to jump on this, but now they're on it as well. And so basically, the use of AI and ML has been to overall, I think the first view was it can help us optimize and manage testing, because of course you've got quite a whole bunch of data that you can analyze differently, that we've never really analyzed. Log files, tests that passed, that didn't pass, project over project, how the environment was constructed, who were the developers building it. All this information can be put in a model to kind of find out for a specific application and its evolution, which might be the areas that you will have to test, or that are you can be recommended to test because you've got higher business risk in that area or higher technical risk. And so really optimizing the testing process. But then if you look at then actually companies became smarter. And we talked about test data management. Well, today there are AI and ML tool, generative adversarial network as a technology, really advanced technology, I would say, that doesn't just generate those faces that we all see that we think are real, but they're not, and they're amazingly close to the real face, to being a real face. Well, they're also pretty good at generating now synthetic data, and synthetic data that is very close to the reality. And when I'm thinking about synthetic data for test data for testing, this is not just a structure of data, but it's basically think about all the joins and the correlations and everything we do with the data once it's used by the application. And so these apps learn about all that stuff, and they're able to, these models learn about that stuff and are able to really help build create the test data from a synthetic perspective that is needed, right? Supporting GDPR, etc. There's also self-healing, so that you've got a bunch of tests, especially in the packaged application world. This is a problem where UI is much more dynamic, and quite often a test suite fails because of a locator change. And in the past, you would have to find out if it was the test because the functionality was wrong, or was it the test that's failing? And now you can automate that step with self-healing, because you can easily adjust. And the algorithm proposes, having learned and listened into how the application, the user interface is built, the DOM model and the interactions, can actually suggest a locator where that object might have moved without having it failed. If it changed color, that at the end of the day, it might be a behavior that you don't mind about, or if you do, it will highlight it. And there's also so it's been around the generation of automation, what to automate next based on a change. Again, CI/CD tools use some of this, but also testing tools can do that. So there's a whole bunch of on the use case front, you've got batteries of use cases, test cases year over year that you've been adding, cleaning those up with natural language processing, finding out if there are repetitive test cases that you could pull out, is also another use case. I could go on and on. There's a whole bunch of them. I wrote a report about this. I really need to update it. And then you've got the other side of this, which is, how do you test an AI infused application? Right. Now, fortunately, 80% of that testing is going to be what we all know about, the testers, but not what the data scientists know about, because they know nothing about testing. And sometimes even the developers that are assisting them, AI engineers. And so in that research, I found out basically that, for example, your model, the training testing of a model, which people don't really think much about, goes from a simple, let's break the data up so that this is the data you need to train, this is the data you need to test. Well, guess what? There's a strategy behind that. There can be a good strategy behind what is the data that I'm going to, among all the data I have, what is the data, right? What is the most effective data that I can use for testing the model, right? Before I pull it into production and it starts inferencing. There's a lot going on. There's some edge cases that are very hard to test. Now you have, basically predictions. And so if you have a prediction system, you've got an application that is predictive. How do you know when a test passes or doesn't pass? A test now might be passing also, at a percentage, and tools don't know how to deal with that. There's models. So model-based testing is kind of one answer to this as well. Bringing testers into the loop much more tighter with those data scientists and those AI teams is one of the answers to this. There's also a lot still that needs to be done in terms of bringing DevOps into the AI, and so therefore not just when we continuously deliver software, but now we're continuously delivering models, right? So you've got these MLOps and AI, right, that are supposed to do that. But guess what? You need now a broader platform that helps you deploy not just the models, the software, the models, and the data, and do that continuously. I don't think that yet we have really good and cool technology that can help teams do that. I think that's kind of next thing to come. There are organizations working on this, but the testing of AI is something that I think what I tell testers that might be listening, reach out to your AI teams, go help them. they need your help because they interpret the word test very differently from how we as testers interpret it.
Absolutely. In fact, that's another reason why we made a recent acquisition, which brings us these capabilities to do ML ops and model testing at production level, which is very, very important as we transcend both AI infused and AI driven application landscapes. So we are about 5 minutes away from the closure of this session. Some reflections, Paul, from an overall tech landscape standpoint. How are you looking at leveraging cloud both as a technology leader for your internal effectiveness, as well as what sort of data that you put on the cloud, and what are some of the challenges that you've been seeing from an assurance perspective? Because I'm very sure cloud is at the center of a lot of innovation that you bring in.
Yeah, okay. So there's quite a lot in that question. I'll see how I get on. In terms of cloud, the key we've touched on a number of these things. You really need to be able to leverage the cloud and leverage them so that it becomes serverless and everything else, because otherwise the maintenance activity is a monthly activity, in terms of actually just staying up to date and relevant. So actually you've almost got to ensure that you are not using the cloud as a data center. And then you're also not then just using the cloud as or your servers in the cloud as if they are pets. You've got to get to the point where they are truly treated as cattle, because if you can't deploy, you're worried to deploy, or you're just nervous around it for whatever reason, then it just causes so many other knock-on impacts everywhere else. So the true sort of a state where you can press a button and it goes through all the way through and you haven't cut the corners is really, really important, because it might seem initially like, I could do this, and it'll take me 1 sprint less or 2 sprints less. But ultimately, those additional sprints with compound interest in terms of effort going forward, you get that back many times over, even in the same year. And there's lots of evidence around actually doing that. So I would really encourage that actually just do things right this time. Don't have too many things running at the same time, is also because no one can really multitask. So actually doing context switching just takes so much time and energy that actually you just become really, really inefficient as much as anything else. Do everything with a purpose is kind of my main mantra in that sense, because it might be a difficult conversation to say, no, don't start that. We haven't got a full team to do it. Don't just muddle on and go, well, I've got 7/8 of a team, so I'll start. Well, that 8th will just become a problem later. And you've got to, if that 8th becomes testing, or that 8th becomes something that, well, you don't need that because you look at that further down the line, that's where you start to, you absolutely miss tricks galore and lead to problems in production, or lead to problems in terms of deployment in the later stages, because effectively you lose control from the beginning because you don't know everything that you need to be doing and you haven't actually understood why you're doing something. So always understand why you're doing something would be my other key thing around it, because you've got to then know, well, how do you celebrate afterwards? And celebration is so important for actually to then the ongoing motivation of why you want to carry on. You want to carry on because you can see yourself making differences. So it really is important around that.
Very nice. That was quite detailed, Paul. So before we end, how can we not have a comment on customer experience when we are talking about digital landscape? So Diego, how do you think someone needs to measure the CX effectiveness from an assurance standpoint? Is there a metric? Because we have emotions, we have sentiments, and not everything can be automated. So it's pretty interesting. How do you view that, the CX dimension?
Well, I could respond, formally with what Forrester does, because actually we have a customer experience index, as you know, and I think on top. So of course it looks at some of those soft issues of, but one important metric in there is quality at the end of the day, because if quality is poor, it's going to damage the experience. So, to keep it simple and short, what I would say is before you start looking at any cooler stuff, make sure you don't get a lot of bugs in production. because those are going to hurt your customers if they get into production. It's okay if you still have, a lot of rework during the process, but avoid the bugs in production, because at the end of the day, that seems to me from the data also shows one of the most important quality metrics that clients, end user clients are concerned about, right? Those bugs that hit production, that stop revenue from coming in, that have a impact on customer experience, that's all that creates a poor experience for them.
Got it. Any comments on that, Paul? And last comments on the CX side of it?
So I agree. Bugs in production, they just impact confidence. It's as simple as that. It might look trivial, oh, it's just a typing thing or it's just a formatting thing. But if it looks unprofessional and it doesn't look complete, then it just leaves questions in the customer's mind around, well, what else is there? What if they missed this, then what else is there? And we have now the ability to get changes live within the day. So there's actually no need, in terms of being able to go and have those things. So actually, it's got to be quality first, because ultimately, we're trusted with people's money, and you wouldn't trust someone with your money if you thought actually they're not quality and they don't respect it. And so that's really, really important.
Excellent. This has been fantastic. I think it covered all the aspects on modern day digital assurance that is at the fulcrum of ensuring software is a deterministic factor. While, as Diego rightfully said, there are many other things. Just going back to the Amazon example, while software drives a lot of efficiencies, there are many other parameters that need to gel in for a successful digital transformation. And we heard similar pragmatic experiences from Paul driving in it day by day at Atom. And we at Signity are committed to ensure our customers go digital first. In the process, digital software quality engineering, test automation, and data first digital engineering. Together with this, we promise our customers to help them win the digital landscape. And we're going to bring in more similar sessions of digital dialogues. Would request you to tune in, and any of your valuable inputs and comments and feedback, please do send us. A recording of the session would be available in a day, and we will continue to bring many such sessions. Thank you, Diego and Paul, for taking your time on behalf of Signity, and also a lot of thanks and sincere note of gratitude for a wonderful audience who've been very supportive with all those comments and questions. With that, this is Sai Ram Vedam, the Global Chief Marketing Officer, signing off. We'll see you all again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.